Hey folks, welcome back to Integrative Psychonautics. I hope you're doing well out there. In today's video, I'm going to attempt the difficult, shall we say, and try to communicate what is actually a very large, complex, nuanced topic in a short amount of time and make it a bit simple here for you, because I think this is an incredibly key piece of information that a lot of people overlook, right? So in today's video, what I mean here is we're going to be talking about this idea of understanding the lens or the window that you view life through, and how this impacts your understanding of everything around you and how important it is to account for your lens and any distortions in it. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Okay, so just a couple quick things here before we go ahead and dive into the topic here. I'm shooting from the hip today. I don't have any notes. I don't have any bullet points. I'm just kind of pulling from my brain here. This is an incredibly key, central, actually very fundamental, basic personal development concept that if you've done any like seminar work, i.e. like Tony Robbins or a landmark forum or anything like that, this will be familiar to you. Or if you've done any NLP trainings, perhaps this will be familiar to you. But if you are perhaps just kind of someone who's stumbled down the YouTube rabbit hole and somehow found me, whether that was via Reddit or what have you, maybe you're interested in psychedelics, this may be something you've never thought of before. That really is a very, again, crucial, key, fundamental, basic thing to understand. The other thing I'll say about this really quick, just for a little context here, is this is one of these things that pops out in sessions from time to time when I need to convey it to a client, right? So when I'm working with my clients, there's a funny thing that happens where a lot of it is adaptive to the client and where they're at and what their needs are in the moment and kind of the angle the conversation's taking or the needs of what they're working through or working on in that particular moment. So, I've crammed my head full of literally years and years and years over, like pretty much 2 decades of personal development study and work at this point. Trainings, all that, right? And sometimes I'm not even aware of all the ideas that are cruising around in here or crammed in there, and until they want to come out in the context as a tool for a client in a session. So there are certain ideas that I know that are kind of built in and implicit to me now because I've studied so much that sometimes I'm just shocked people don't know or understand or haven't seen. But of course, you don't know what you don't know. And why would you consider something, unless you'd kind of been taught or prompted to think or look in that way, or, you know what I mean? So there's obviously a lot of information gaps that happen from different fields of study. So I was having a session with a client a couple weeks ago who I absolutely adore. And this came up. And for me, it was a bit of a transitional stepping stone idea in the conversation that I wanted to just kind of drop in there as like, by the way, let's be aware of this, to make a larger point. But for the client, this ended up being something that was clearly like a new and really engaging, interesting idea that I think they took a lot of useful value from. And it just reminded me like, right, this is really important. This is a really important concept here. So I put it on the notes here of things to share with you guys, and here I am capturing it on video for you. So, okay, context out of the way, rambling done for the moment. Here's the idea, okay? The idea is all of us essentially live with a filter of subjective experience between what we might think of as our core self and the external world that we cannot separate ourselves from, right? In other words, we have a set of life experiences that creates like a lens through which we view life. So each of us has a lens. This is kind of a metaphor here, but the metaphor is each of us has a lens through which we view life, right? And depending on our life experiences, that lens could be shaped in different ways. It could get damaged. It could get distortions that totally alter the way the world looks to us in a way that is unique to us and our life experience, right? So the first kind of piece of this that I want you to really wrap your head around here is that you have a subjective filter that you are viewing everything in life through. And, ultimately it's called a nervous system or called a body. And there's no way to be alive and perceive life without that. So we are perceiving through our set of filters that is our nervous system and is our body. And those filters are informed by early life experiences, obviously early childhood experiences, which is kind of the major focal point of the therapeutic world, right? But also, your childhood years, your teenage years, your early adulthood years, and ongoingly, and not just lived experience, but media, cultural conditioning, cultural programming, familial programming, random events that have happened in your life, et cetera, et cetera. All of these add up to create a set of inputs that create a filter through which we process and understand the world around us. Okay. Now, I want you to consider that if we've been wounded, that creates dings or damages or warps or distortions in the filter. Okay. And surely there's no human alive who hasn't been through some sort of psychological, emotional, or physical wounding as part of growing up and living and being alive, right? This is part of what it means to be human, is to go through adverse experiences and to have that inform what our nervous system learns as part of reality. Now, a lot of that happens, obviously, when we're really young, and is quite frankly things that our nervous system develops as it's figuring out who we are and what this world around us is and what life is. It's like we acquire it. We don't have control or choice or volition around the beliefs and the ideas and the experiences that happen and how those shape us. Not consciously, at least, and especially not at a very young age, right? So each of us is going through life with this filter through which we are looking at the world and processing information around us that was largely acquired and formatted and shaped and possibly distorted at a very young age, really beyond our choice or our control. And yet we are the bearer of it, right? And so we're going through life. And for most of us, if you look out there in the world and you look at society, mostly what do we see is people who are not self-aware that they have a subjective lens that is not objective truth, right? So most people live under the illusion that they are objective and living in truth, and that it's capable, that they're capable, or that's possible to be objective as a human being without bias, without projecting our map of meanings onto people. And I can get into the nuances of the map of meanings, but I want to keep it simple here. Most of us, your average person lives under the illusion that they are not subjective all the time, and that they are not bringing their set of distortions, to bear on the world around them and making projections as part of perception. Right? Most people are not self-aware of this. They think, oh, what I see, what I think, what I feel is true, is accurate, is reality, could be no other way. I must take it, everything that happens inside my head, every thought that I think, I must take literally. I must take it personally, and it is accurate and true. Right? This is the standard operating way for people in our society right now. And this causes a lot of mental health issues and a lot of emotional health issues and a lot of relating issues and social issues. I mean, a huge chunk of the problems we deal with in the world come out of these distortions in our lens, in our map of meaning and our map of understanding ourselves and life and each other, right? So the first thing is just to know that this is a thing and be self-aware that you have a lens through which you're looking at life that is unique to you, is yours, wasn't necessarily chosen by you, but yet here it is, and shapes the way you process everything in life, right? The way you make sense of everything. Process is a bit of a vague word, so the way you make sense. So that's the first thing to understand. The next thing to understand about this and this is really the thing, like one of the things to understand when it comes to doing trauma work or personal healing work or self-regulation work or doing any kind of growth or resolving the past or anything like this, is that the distortions in your lens will massively dictate how you feel, what seems possible for you. It'll dictate the kind of conclusions or beliefs that you make. It will massively dictate your sense of peace or well-being, your sense of safety in the world. It'll dictate things like what are called like a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, if you're familiar with those. These distortions in your lens, when you're doing, let's say, psychedelic therapy, for example, or when you're doing, deep, somatic therapy or trauma healing or any of this stuff, the trick is to notice the distortions in your lens as being part of the wound or a pointer towards the wound, and not the truth, not reality, not the wholeness of real reality. Right? This is where we get caught up and stuck and confused and clenched and contracted or reactive. You want to be really, really aware and curious about and exploratory of the distortions in your lens through which you view life, so that you can rectify them and correct the lens. Now imagine with this lens through which you're looking through life, again, it's not your fault that you've accumulated the wounds that you've accumulated and the meanings that you've accumulated, but it is your opportunity to clean that up and create a new pristine lens through which you view life much more clearly, much more accurately, much more balanced, much more whole and complete, right? And especially when it comes to viewing yourself. This is where this really applies in a big way, right? So when I'm supporting someone who wants to heal from their trauma and they, let's say they want to use a psychedelic to do that, whether that's psilocybin or MDMA or something, one of the first things that tends to come up for people when they're new on this and they're in their first psychedelic therapy session is these distortions in the lens. And sometimes if the person, is fortunate, I would say, they become immediately aware, oh, geez, I've been thinking or feeling this or carrying this belief, and I don't know if that's true, and maybe that's not right. And they start to self-reflect and sort that on their own, right? That's, I think, the better situation. The more complicated version of that is the person, it keeps being presented as almost as a loop, as a piece that they're stumbling over in the session. And then that's really where it's more my job or a therapist's job or, another guide's job to bring this to their awareness, bring this to their attention, and help them start to get curious about if the distortions in their lens are correct or if these are distortions, right? So this is what I'm trying to say in a really kind of general, broad, and fairly polite way, is this is where the work is for a lot of us. I read a comment on Reddit a while back. I wish I would have screenshotted or saved it so I could quote the person. But it was something like, when I did MDMA therapy, I finally understood that it was the eyes that I see myself through and see the world through that needed healing. It wasn't that I was broken or that the world is wrong. It's that my eyes, my view, my way of seeing things was warped and distorted. And that's what I needed to correct, right? So this is at the heart. This is at the center of the whole thing. This is at the center of trauma healing and trauma therapy. This is at the center of psychedelic therapy. And if you're not accounting for this, this is why we see people take psychedelics and have these big, wild, grandiose, abstract, strange conclusions that they run with and then consider are true without a second thought. The reason that happens is because people are not self-aware of this lens and the distortions in the lens and the way that causes distortions in thinking, distortions in emotion, distortions in reactions, distortions in perception and meaning making overall, right? This also applies, like, again, I one of the places I encountered this was in seminar work, in personal development land. And this is at the heart of personal development. If you can really see that your subjective lens is a subjective lens and account for that and be willing to question it, challenge it, explore what's outside of the set of beliefs that your lens, seems to distort for you, that's where so much of the possibility of your life in terms of personal growth, personal development, up-leveling is. So this is also not just about trauma work and trauma healing. This is also something in terms of growth work and, developing yourself and becoming more and leveling up. Same thing applies here, right? For example, if your personal growth goals are built out of a sense of being not enough, then you need to be self-aware that you are in reaction to a feeling of not enough and work on that first before, pursuing your goal, so that you're pursuing your goal, A, from an authentic place, and B, from an emotionally centered place that gives you more strength and more resilience to actually get there, right? So I'm kind of like in rambly, preachy mode a little bit here, but hopefully this makes sense. This is a really important thing to understand. This is a very deep concept with a lot of implications to it. And I could truly, talk about it at great length, especially with a bit of back and forth with someone who had questions about this. But I just want to kind of present the basic concept here for you and kind of start to lay this out. Because again, this is one of these things that if you've been in the personal development world for a while, I'm sure you've heard something like this already and But for those of you who haven't, who have never thought about this, especially if you're running in the psychedelic world, brand new, trying to sort out your issues, this is something you need to probably know first and start to really wrap your head around. So let me know what you think. Does this resonate? Is this clear? Is this message landing for you? Does it make sense? Do you see how you have a subjective lens through which you interpret everything that may or may not be accurate or clear, or may not have distortions in it? Let me know what you think. Happy to share more about this if you guys have questions. So please do leave those down below. But I feel complete with this for now. So I'm going to wrap the video here and call this done. And hopefully this lands well for you. So much love to you. Thank you for watching. Tons more content on the way. I'm really working in the background here to complete a course, start my next course I'm going to build for you guys, and start to tie all of this together. There is a connect the dots here that eventually I'll be doing probably for a long time on the channel. So anyways, much love to you guys, and I hope you're doing well out there, and I'll talk to you again soon.